you've also mentioned that you have particular views on love and intimacy. What are those views?
I think the biggest one is that like we don't inherently believe like intimacy is just a sexual component. So a lot of times because I'm usually the more like affectionate one. If I feel like
masks are typically
softies. Like physical touch is big for me, but it's not always. I think it is for you sometimes, but it's not always. Where for me it always is. So like if I feel like I'm not getting enough intimacy and I vocalize it, it's usually just, can you just hold my hand a little bit more?
Yeah,
like those are things like it doesn't inherently. I think our intimacy is like more of a holistic picture than just like a sexual component to it. So I feel like if I was like a little like depleted in that area and I couldn't fulfill that myself, then I would just be like, can you like give me a hug or something like that? And finding ways in like day to day to just like connect a little bit that she doesn't feel like she's overextending and kind of like violating her own boundaries for, like overstimulating, or because there'll just be sometimes where I feel like you have a bad day and the last thing you want is to be touched. And then I have to be like, okay, like I can wait on this a little bit. So I think that's one thing that we find other couples also have, but it's not like inherently like the most common. Like I feel like when we have conversations with intimacy with our friends, they largely just go back to like some sexual aspect. And like there's so much to intimacy of like having in-depth conversations and that we're like emotionally connecting and we're intellectually connecting and that like I'm getting my like physical touch needs met. Like that is all together like how we look at intimacy.
Spending time together, doing things together, doing stuff with our dogs together. Like it just is all this compounding aspect of like the different levels of intimacy together. And especially like I didn't grow up in a very huggy family. Like we only hugged each other when we thought we were like gonna go off and potentially die or something. Like it was very dramatic. So it's something in our relationship where I've definitely been able to get a lot more comfortable, being a more touchy person and stuff like that. But it all, like we said, comes down to communication and talking of like, what are your expectations and my expectations and what's something you need and in that time or that instant that the other person could easily provide you and that doesn't cross their boundary.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's also times where like maybe there's a function of intimacy that like a platonic friend, like me just going and hanging out with somebody while she's at work. And then like I can have like a conversation with a friend about like how they're doing. And like to me that would still be a form of intimacy.
I agree with that.
Close to me. And it's always like, oh, I want to go like hang out with this person, or like Nicole's childhood best friend lives out here. Like sometimes they'll just go hang out and connect because they haven't seen each other in a while, and then I'll go find something else to do, kind of thing, and that fulfills her in a way because like you guys have been friends for so long, kind of thing, and being able to also extend like out beyond just our marriage into our friend circles and be connecting with our friends. Or like if there's a night you're like, well, I really want to go to bed, and I'm like, well, I really want to go out.
I'm like, go for it, girl.
Go for it. And then, we'll go out with a friend that like hasn't been able to go out with us in a long time. And we want to go support our friend that's like doing a DJ set. Kind of thing. And she's like, but I want to watch TikToks in my bed.
And
I'm like, okay.
With the dogs.
I was like, just tell me you're not going to be mad if I go. And she'll go, no. You just tell me you're not going to be mad if I don't go. And then we communicate, and then it's like, I'm on my way out.
It sounds like a very healthy dynamic.
And then just check in every now and then.
It's important to have your own lives as well. I mean, obviously you're married, you're building a life together, but it's important to expand beyond that and develop your own personal friendships, your own personal friendships. I believe in that.
I think the urge to merge is
it's a real thing.
Lesbian trope, sure. But I honestly think like anybody that feels like they connect really well with somebody, regardless of their orientation or their identity, is probably going to have that like urge to merge with another person. And I feel like it's good in a way, but like you got to like balance the things that are also you. Because when we first moved here, and you were like trying to transition because, you know, my job is what moved me here. So I had a job when we moved, and you had to figure out like, okay, well, what am I going to do for work now, kind of thing. And then like the move kind of just like merged us into like my career was driving so much of everything. And I feel like you were like, what am I doing? What am I going to do? And it was like hard for you to figure out, and until you know, got your job plan back in place, and then you like kind of could root yourself again as Nicole instead of just like Brittany with the move and Nicole just came.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's not just your friendships, but it's important to develop your own careers as well. It's, I mean, there are certain couples that can make that work, but at least for me, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I definitely am the type of person that needs to have my own life in a way, my own career, my own friends. I'm very independent in that way.
Yeah.
But the urge to merge, isn't that in the L word?
Yeah, I'm
like
pretty
the
sure.
lesbian urge to merge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a real thing. Yeah. I mean, but you're right. It kind of does exist with anyone you connect with.
Yeah.
Like I've spent an asinine amount of time with my best friends too.
Yeah.
It's just kind of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you just find these people throughout your life that like you're just gravitated to, and you don't really know why, and then you just kind of like a magnet. Want to be pulled to them, platonic, romantic, whatever it is. There's just something about it like draws you in. So I think that like merging point, anyone can like fall into it, and as long as I feel like there's healthy boundaries to it, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it.
For sure. Yeah.
Just balance it.
There are definitely boundaries to put in place there. I have a question that just popped into my head for you, but I think the anxiously attached person, I've struggled with this in the past, kind of finds themselves to be a bit of a burden, especially when asking for reassurance.
Yeah.
And it's taken me a while to learn that it's okay to ask for that, and it's actually healthy to ask for that. So did you have the same struggle or a similar struggle?
Yeah, I feel like, well, with the merging part, I feel like the anxious part of me just like wanted to merge in really quickly. Too. Like I just feel a lot of things. I feel all my feelings all the time, and sometimes really big. And I don't know if it's strictly just the anxious attachment, or that's just like my form of ADHD. That's just how it all works. But
or you just have a big heart.
Yeah,
that too.
Yeah, I do. Sometimes too big.
Yeah.
But I feel like I would be like very quick to like want to just also meet her needs and maybe even disregard mine, and that like sensation to just kind of like connect really quickly. But then if I felt like, you know, maybe she had a rough day and it has nothing to do with me, immediately I'm like, oh man, I'm a burden. Thinking through all these things, kind of like spiraling a little bit internally, and just like very quiet. I feel like, you know, I'm in my head if I'm like really quiet.
Yeah.
I'm just introspective and just like silently there.
I also think that once you realize that like she could trust to ask me to, you know, for that reassurance, and I'd be like, oh, of course, here you go. And like just freely offer that instead of being like not hemming and hawing over it, or not making it feel like it is such a burden on myself.
Yeah.
Where like she's just, you know, gotten to the point where she knows that if she gets to the point where she's like, you know, I could really use this, that it's like not even a question, that it's not going to become a big deal. And
I think
that it's just kind of like second nature now, I feel like.
Yeah, I think the anxious part of it was very much like I didn't want to say it, more so because I was scared for the outcome of like, I'm not going to get it. And then you're going to be like, wow, get away from me because I don't want this thing.
Yeah.
So I would just want to, not inherently with you, but just like in any scenario, want to like internalize it and try to just shove it away. But I'm not good at that. Like I have to process through it, and probably cry a little bit in the process. But I would be just so scared. And maybe it was like a carryover from like my first relationship with a woman of just like calling attention to something and then it creating conflict, and now you're leaving kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'd be like, well, I'll burden myself with it because that would be better than being left behind kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I feel like the anxious attachment style was kind of just in that form of like, I'll just hold on to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then that's like drinking poison and expecting somebody else to die.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
totally.
just like, okay, I have to get it out there and to trust the process that like she's not going to think like, oh, I'm being too needy or, wow, she can't do anything for herself kind of thing. Like I always have to reassure her. But I feel like we got to that state of like trust pretty quickly kind of thing. And then even to the point where like I would sometimes try to also encourage you I feel like you wouldn't share with me something more so because you didn't want to talk about it. And I'd be like, oh, well, like we can talk about it because you let me talk about my feelings all the time.
Yeah.
Like
yeah, for sure.
Like I can give you that same reassurance back. So I think in that process, probably in the first like 3-4 months, I've learned that you're not going to run away just because I share something, and you learned that you don't have to run away from your own feelings because I'll be here to help you process through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
it takes time to develop that kind of trust with someone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think we had a little bit of like a Kickstarter because you got really sick and we're in the hospital for a little bit, like early on in our relationship.
Oh shit! Yeah.
Just like something you couldn't kick on your own. And being a medical professional, she probably should have gone to the hospital like 4 days before she actually did.
Mm-hmm.
And I like helped like take care of the dogs and all the things like. But coming out of that was like really rough because it was almost like
She met my parents for the first time.
Yeah.
In the
After they
hospital.
had just found out that she was a lesbian and dating a woman.
Yeah.
And you're like, hey.
Here she is.
Yeah. And then her dad and I had to leave the room so she could get an evaluation. He's like, let's go get a coffee. And then like we sit down with our coffee and he goes, so when did you know you were gay?
I was
like,
what?
Coming straight out of the gate with the question, sir.
Yeah.
But luckily, like I could just trust that like she's just like such a strong, like confident person.
You can hold your own.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's been nice to be able to like lean on you for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But it was like, I think that was also a really tough time because you were like, it wasn't like you're going to die scenario, but like you were just like so over being sick at that point. And I don't know much about like being medical, but her family's all like EMT and flight nurse and all this.
Yeah.
It's like they were a lot more calm and consistent.
Yeah.
And under the surface, I'm like freaking the fuck out. Because I was like, if I leave and go to work, am I gonna come back and she's dead? Like like my brain would just like run with it.
Yeah.
God. But I feel like that scenario forced a lot of trust into the process because a lot of things just kind of happened at once. And then shortly after is when your lease ended and you moved in.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So there was like a weird scenario that kind of just put us in a place to
like kickstart
the trust.
Yeah.
Well, it's good that it went in that direction and it didn't turn into a trauma bond.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Because I feel like that kind of thing could easily turn into a trauma bond.
Yeah. Especially I feel like if we would have started our relationship like kind of a little like toxic or back and forth or like, just figuring things out like in a early relationship, I feel like that could have definitely that scenario like kind of kept something going for longer than maybe it would have necessarily gone with. But no, I just, if anything, that instant showed me of like, wow, like I am so supportive, and usually I'm the person to take care of everyone else. Like being in healthcare, I'm the provider. I'm controlling the situation. I'm, helping someone heal or saving someone's life kind of situation. So to be on the reverse end of that is like very difficult. And to be reliant on someone.
Accepting help.
Yeah. It's really hard for me. So it kind of showed me that I could.
Scenario where I'd never met your parents and your mom stayed at my house that night so that they could come into town and be able to see you at the hospital a little bit. And then, like literally like what, a month prior is when you told your dad that you were thinking about dating women / I already kind of am.
Yeah, you're like, I am.
And for trusting me to just like
handle that situation.
Yeah. To be like confident in my answers in that process. Yeah. Kind of thing. And I feel like I get along really well with your family.
For sure.
Yeah. And I don't talk to my parents anymore. And they've kind of like her parents, her mom, stepmom and dad have kind of just like adopted me in.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I would love to have that kind of dynamic because I lost my mom and she and I were really, really close.
Yeah.
So ideally, I'd love to have a relationship with the mother-in-law, so to speak.
Yeah. I feel like there's all these like negative stereotypes about like what mother-in-laws are like, kind of thing. And I'm sure those come from a place of like people have experienced those things, but like Julie's been wonderful. Like the day we told Julie that I wasn't talking to my parents anymore, Julie texted me outside of our group chat and was like, "You're my daughter now."
Yeah. Oh my God.
I just got a little teary-eyed.
No, I've missed my mom all day. I'm like, I'm gonna get. It's always us. Oh God. Okay, I'm fine.
Which is also kind of nice because we grew up in super conservative like households and areas of the country, and you know that leans into like why I don't talk to my parents anymore. But
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it honestly was more of a burden to try and keep the relationship working than it was to just cut it off.
I mean, you have two choices as an adult. You can either cut it off or you have to accept them for who they are. Yeah. Because at a certain point, it kind of gets to the point where they're not going to change.
Yeah.
And they're so stuck in their ways. Yeah. So, I mean, that's not true for everybody. Yeah. Like, my dad has changed a lot with time. But if it gets to be more of a burden to maintain that relationship and it's not good for you, then don't do it. Simply because they're family, it doesn't mean you have to. Yeah, and the phrase "blood is thicker than water" is actually about like the blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb, which is the full sayings. Like the people you choose are actually the strongest bonds, and not by birth. Yeah, for sure, kind of thing. So it just got to the point like being military and always like finding extensions of community and. I still had strong connections with people I grew up with, Hannah and Amy that are, a lesbian couple, and they went through IVF. Like we have all these people in different phases of our lives that actually I feel like care and are intentional about like being supportive, that I just didn't need to like hang on to that anymore. It just felt like crabs in a barrel. Like they're just going to keep pulling me down, kind of thing. And I still talk to my sister. Yeah. And her kids too, and she's been nothing but supportive, but it just got to a point of like I think I'm better off without it. And your mom's like a perfect example of like she has an old way of thinking, but you just present her with new information and she goes, oh okay, and then adjusts her perspective. I could never get there with my parents. Yeah, I understand. I mean, everyone is different. But yeah, I think in my experience, it's taken a very long time for my dad to come around. Yeah. He's great now, but it took him like 5 years at the bare minimum. Yeah, actually, kind of 10. Yeah, I've been out for 10 years, so I was very early. To come out, but it took him a while, and sometimes it's worth it to be that patient. Sometimes it's not. If it just. It just depends. And if they're bringing you down, then there's no point in maintaining that relationship. Yeah. I'm glad you were able to get there with your dad, though. And, like, I feel like, with your mom, like, we can see her, like taking in the information and progressing. It might not be, like, big leaps and bounds, but that's awesome that you're able to get there with your dad. Yeah. Like I said, it took a while. But, I mean, he's great now. And I saw the progression. Yeah. Over time. It's not like he just up and decided to change one day. For sure. It was like little steps along the way, and that's why I maintained that relationship. Plus, I mean, I love my dad so much. Yeah. And now he's all I got. And my sister too. My sister and I are very, very close. So thankfully I have that connection as well. Yeah. Okay, I've never actually met a lesbian married couple. At least I don't think. Like maybe I have in passing and I just didn't know. But do you guys have a community? Like, do you guys have people that are also? I mean, you've kind of mentioned, but do you have a community of married lesbians? So I would say in LA, no. We are like the token married lesbian couple, like in our friend group, and everyone's like. Honestly, how they introduce us to other people is like, these are our married couples. Yeah. Like, these are our married friends. Yeah. Which I think is like super cute. We've kind of taken on like the mom and dad role a little bit with our like friends. I love that. Yeah. And yeah.
She's the dad.
I could have guessed
always.
that, you know. I could have guessed that. Yeah.
But so that's like a really fun dynamic for us. I think honestly, even if we were not married, we'd still have that kind of mom and dad role. I've been like my best friend from high school was still like joking about it the other day when we were at dinner. I was the mom when we were in high school. That's just kind of like our personalities.
Yeah.
But no, we have like, they don't live here, but we have our good friends Hannah and Amy, which is your childhood best friend, and they went through the whole IVF process. So it's been so nice to see them, because that's also like pretty rare.
Yeah, it's very rare.
Another queer couple going through IVF, and they had a lot of trials and tributes with some miscarriages and things like that. So they were able to kind of like guide us a little bit on like what our plans should kind of look like, and what, just from their own personal lived experience. And then basically
everyone else we know is
military.
There's a lot in
there's a
my
lot of military lesbians.
There's a lot of military lesbians.
Yeah,
women married to women have kids through IVF or IUI.
Yeah.
We just recently made a new military lesbian couple friend in the office that I actually moved into. And they were about to leave themselves. And we're like, wow, I feel like we've known you forever. And just as we become friends, the military sends you away.
Yeah.
It's like the common thing.
So it sucks.
Yeah.
But
but
it's cool when you can kind of get back together then. Like you move somewhere and it's like, oh my goodness, we're all moving to the same place. This is crazy.
Yeah.
So we have a community in that sense, but LA not so much.
LA's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, I always talk about this. It's so hard to date here.
Yeah.
And it's hard to attract the right person for you in a town like this. I also feel like everyone just wants to be single.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely, it's kind of interesting because I didn't really think DC and LA were going to be so different in the sense of like the queer things.
Yeah, yeah.
But oh my goodness, the amount of queer events, the amount of different queer events, like you can go to like a mainly like BIPOC event, and you can go to, the 30 and older like dyke nights.
Those are fun. And I shouldn't be there technically, but they're so much fun. Yeah.
There's so many ways that they've built community and spaces for like whatever you're looking for. There's an event for it.
Yeah. So it's just been night and day difference from DC, which I thought was like, it's really cool.
Yeah.
We also just got so lucky that we met our friends Amber and Morgan.
Yeah.
We met them at Dinah. We had been at G Flip like the night before, and we saw them and we're standing next to them, but we're like too scared to talk to them. We're like, they look so cool. Like their outfits are so cute.
And we roll up to the opening event at Dinah, and they're right in front of us in the line. I was like, this has to be fates aligned. Like that we have an opportunity. We didn't say hi before. We can say hi again. And we go in. And, like, they went to the bar right when we did. And I was like, oh, we saw you guys at the G-Flip concert. Loved your outfits. Loved that they were color coordinated. We love color coordinating outfits, too. And I was like, let me buy you your first round of drinks. And then
that's really sweet.
By the end of the night, they're like, did we just become best friends?
Yeah. It's one of those things. That's awesome.
And then they introduced us to so many different groups that have introduced us to so many different groups. And I feel like we have all these different, like, pockets of friends that are commingled, but then we can also hang out with them and it not be like the full same group every time.
Yeah.
And they are always good. Like Amber and Morgan are always good about introducing us to new people everywhere we go.
Yeah.
They're like,
Same
these are our friends,
Makara.
Amber or Brittany Nicole. These are our friends, Brittany Nicole, and then somebody we met through them is the same way. When we go to all these events, and then we found folks through those friend structures of, they're producing events. So now we can go to these events and like spend the money at the door and throw the money at the dancers so that, they're getting the support that they need to, be putting on things like Alejandro's or, whatever the event is. It's cool to see all of our friends like producing or DJing or performing now, just through those two people that we just happened to meet. At G-Flip and then Dinah.
Yeah. Big G-Flip fan.
Yeah.
Big G-Flip fan. Yeah. No, fantastic live. Honestly, it sounds funny because I've been to so many concerts, but them live, one of the best like the vocals, one of the best concerts I've ever been
Insane.
to. It was crazy.
And that dyno we were at, they performed.
Yeah.
So
we saw G-Flip at their concert, and then we saw them at Dinah like 2 days later. We're like, this is the best.
Oh yeah, it was back to back. I did go to that concert, and it was so good. The one at El Rey. Yeah, the show was amazing. I actually found out that Coley was at that show as well.
No way.
This is
Red String Theory.
Yes, you took the words out of my mouth. So this is crazy, but I'm a big God person. Like, I have a lot of faith in God, and I can leave it at that. But I believe that there was God involved in creating that dynamic and meeting at the exact time that we needed to.
Yeah.
Because we've had so many conversations about this where we've been in the same room over and over and over again. And it's just crazy that we never crossed paths.
Yeah.
I mean, we were at the same Eden event, and it was pretty small. It was at Hotel Ziggy.
Yeah.
But I just so happened to, like, right as she was walking out, I was walking out onto the patio, and we just didn't see each other.
Wow.
And
that's crazy.
I mean, it's divine intervention.
Always near each other, and Hinge was the one thing that
was the
connection.
Yeah. It's funny because I started this off by saying we never would have crossed paths. That's not true. But it's just funny that the stars happened to align exactly when they did. Because I think we met each other right when we needed to.
Yeah.
Yeah, not I think. I know we met each other right when we needed to.
Yeah.
We talked kind of about it too earlier today, about just there were things that I'd always wanted in my like career in the military, like these certain assignments that I'd always thought were for me, and then I didn't get them. But if things didn't play out the way that they would have, I wouldn't have been in the DC area at the time that Nicole was ready to like date a woman and get on the apps.
Yeah.
And all of these things that kind of just like worked out. Even that like my dog, who was a rescue and kind of reactive, her dog was the one dog that made like she was not reactive for it. And in fact, they became like the best of friends. Like all of these things that just happened to be.
They just align.
Everything up until that point had like worked perfectly.
Yeah.
And that it worked out for the both of us, kind of thing. I think with our like religious trauma backgrounds, like we definitely have. I still believe in like I'm spiritual. Like there's no way things are not connected.
Yes, yeah.
Kind of thing, and like I kind of like believe that too.
Yeah.
Gay Jesus was looking out for us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for me, in terms of, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm Jewish, but I wouldn't necessarily call myself religious. I just believe in God, and I have a lot of trust in God. But I don't really follow an organized religion.
Yeah.
But I've just come to realize as I've grown older that I can't not call it that, because that's genuinely what I believe it is. Yeah. And it feels good to follow something so much bigger than yourself. It kind of gives me a moral code.
Yeah.
This is a completely different topic, but we can keep going. So you guys have mentioned IVF. I personally have watched my sister go through it, and I know how stressful it can be. But can you tell me about the process? Who's carrying? What eggs are you freezing? Stuff like that.
So we kind of started the process when I was deployed. We had gotten lab work done right before I left. So that was in 2022 timeframe. And then her labs kind of didn't come back what we were expecting. You know, not that she was like infertile per se, but her response to IVF looked not as good as my response. And we kind of, this is where we took Hannah and Amy's advice. They had gone through multiple failed IUIs and a lot of sadness with that. And they kind of told us like, hey, if you guys want, and it aligns with what your family values are, honestly, jumping right to IVF and might work better for your family.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we were at. We were like, yes, you know, we want to build a family. It might not be like right this second that we want to actually physically have a baby, but we want to kind of preserve our choice later. So in the creation of embryos.
Our original plan before we got like labs back was that we would do reciprocal IVF, that Nicole would carry like an embryo created from me. So then genetically we like the kid would have been mine, but you've always wanted to experience pregnancy. And I'm more of like, I want to be third string on the bench. I'll go in if I have to coach, but please not for me.
Yeah.
I'm built to
I'm
be
literally
I'm
the
built
exact
to
same
be
way.
the doting, supportive partner throughout the process.
Yes.
Whatever you need, I'm gonna get it done.
Yeah.
All the things, just not carry the baby.
I am the exact same way.
Yeah.
I feel the exact same way, but I've always wanted kids.
Yeah.
So
And I had never up until that point, like I've always wanted kids. There was a point where like I was like, I'll adopt if I'm single. If I'm ready to have a kid, I will adopt a kid. I've never cared about like a genetic component of the kid being mine. And also I have a lot of like karmic justice probably waiting for me because I was like a hell of a child kind of thing. Like, so do I really even want a mini me genetically? Probably not. But I was like, I have a lot of love to give and I can give that to any tiny human. Like whoever needs it.
Yeah.
But then I got my labs back and I was like, when they were like, you kind of can't, like it would be a gamble. You could do it, not to say that you can, but it would be a gamble. And I was like, that's an expensive gamble to take. To try and put all this money into this process and you're telling me you're not confident on these labs. Yeah. And at that point, I was like, then I was sad because it wasn't my decision anymore.
Yeah.
When I was choosing to not before, I was like, oh, okay, like I have control in this scenario. And then I didn't have the control. It was just, that was the decision. The same outcome, but my brain was like mad. That somebody told me I couldn't kind of thing. So I had to process through some of that. I worked through it. Sometimes I think it still bothers me a little bit.
Yeah.
Just because I think too, women are always told, like anybody who's raised, expected to like birth a child is like told that your worth is only in your ability to have a kid.
Yeah, true.
Kind of thing. And then to feel like you're broken in it. Not that I ever inherently thought that about women, but then like I kind of like felt that like structure of society kind of like tug at me. So I processed through that one. Still a little teary-eyed every now and then, but
of course,
you were such a good kid and you were so cute that it'll probably work out for the better that we get a little you and not a little me kind of thing. So now we're at the stage of like restarting it, and we'll go through embryo and then freezing embryo stages to preserve that decision space of we're not ready now, but you know, Nicole's at like a young enough age that like statistically we have a better chance of success the first time because of her age and at the point at which we would freeze embryos. So I like that's our next step. So we're kind of like in that decision space right now, but it's stressful figuring out, you know, who the donor's going to be. Because we have an ideal picture of what that looks like, and we don't know if that'll inherently work out because we would want like a known donor that is willing to like be like the kid be known familiar with that person throughout their life as opposed to at 18 or never kind of thing. So ideal scenario would be two men that are married and they can't make a baby on their own. We can't make a baby on our own. Together we create embryos and then we would raise our kids knowing they're siblings.
I feel that's I have the exact same picture in mind. And like a gay married couple would be great. I've just always thought I want my kid to know where they come from and to have that figure in their lives. Yeah,
and it's just, we also are kind of, I mean, there's so many documentaries about like sperm donation gone wrong kind of thing.
It's an unregulated system.
There's no like structure or requirement or accountability unless like you file a civil suit individually against like an organization, and about all of the primary banks have civil suits against them for like mishandling donor sperm and all of these things. So like we're just like, are we actually getting, you know, the donor that we elected to pick, or are we
do
gonna
they
get
have
something
200
else?
siblings?
Or
you know, they're never gonna know kind of situation. So we very much know, though, ultimately whatever the choice comes down to is that we have always built our community and we will build the community that our child will be raised in. Whether that's, you know, our family who is blood, or like our friends, our military family, and things like that. So
I think the big thing was just not removing the decision from our kid to like
to know
by
what
picking
their
a donor
genetics are.
By picking a donor that can never be known. Like we've taken that decision from our kid. Kind of thing. And even them having to wait. I guess also kind of take the decision of them never knowing if we like raise them together, but then that would be familiar to them. It would be just a part of the process. Like, this is your uncle who also helped us
create you,
make you.
Yeah. That's the kind of dynamic that I would want. I would definitely want my child to know where they come from.
For sure.
I never want that looming over their heads.
Yeah.
How old are you guys, if you don't mind me asking?
I'll be 32 in the fall, and Nicole's birthday's coming up, and it'll be 29.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, so you're definitely at a young enough.
Yeah. Plenty. I mean, IVF can even be successful. Like people in their 40s. It's just the statistic when you look down at the statistics. Freezing, at the 30-year mark, just has the highest success rate. So we already know we want a family. So if we were a man and a woman, we could potentially look at freezing now and then, doing that process later. So we're just preserving the time later. And we've even talked about in 5 years, if the world looks so much different, especially with the election coming up, and if that looks so different and we decide we don't want to have children, we at least preserved that choice.
You have the option. I mean, I kind of want to follow in that pursuit. Like, I want to freeze at probably 30 as well. Because my ideal scenario would be one of hers and one of mine.
Yeah.
But I always felt, I don't know if you felt this way too. I do not want to carry, but I will be the person to get you ice cream at 3 a.m. Like, I don't care.
That's so her.
I will do whatever you need me to do. I will be your literal slave.
Yeah.
But I always felt like, oh, is it too much to ask for me to, are you going to carry my child? Like, hi, please carry my child.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what I always felt. But I know there are some women that really want to do that, and it makes them feel more bonded to their partner.
Yeah.
And the child.
It's definitely even thinking about her being pregnant, I'm going to be jealous. Like, I don't want you to be pregnant. I want to be pregnant.
What is that like?
So
I
will not be jealous.
It's weird to be thinking.
No.
Yeah.
And even we went through a little phase of we weren't even sure if we wanted to have kids, just with everything going on in life and moving and whatever.
Yeah.
And then I was just but in my brain, I was still sad about never being pregnant. So it's a weird thing that I feel like is just ingrained in some people.
Yeah. I know some people really have that desire. Can't relate.
Yeah.
Absolutely not within me at all.
Yeah.
No. It is funny because I'm such a woman. I love being a woman, especially an androgynous woman. I think there's a power in that, but there are certain aspects of it that I don't align with at all. That's one of them. Yeah, for sure. My last question for you guys is, what advice do you have for queer people specifically who are trying to find their human in this world?
Yeah, I feel like we kind of talked about how just not giving up in the sense of finding your person.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people try and make kind of a borderline, maybe a little toxic relationship. I've been with this person for X amount of time. We've been through X amount of things. I couldn't imagine going back into the dating pool and just trying to force almost a square peg into a circle.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people hold on to that. And I think with us, where even thinking back to when I was in my straight phase, I could have made it work with a man. And I could have forced the peg. But just being in our relationship, I look back at that now and I'm like, holy shit.
Thank God.
I am living not only even if you were a man and you were the same person, personality wise, just even your personality and then what we connect with and what we're equal on and what we can communicate about and just the ease of the relationship. And honestly, sometimes it can be a little boring because it is so easy and there's no conflict in it. I just want people to give hope in the sense that they will find that person that is that click.
Yes. Yeah.
And not to hold on to something that doesn't suit you and doesn't add value to your life. Not that someone else is always going to need to build you up, but also that you are able to be this person and you have this person right next to you. And be equals together and build each other up, but yet be your own standing person and not be reliant on each other for anything, basically. Especially emotionally.
How would you answer that question?
I mean, the valid point of like, just because it's comfortable doesn't mean it's the right decision.
Yeah.
And being courageous enough to like break out of something, especially if, you know, like if your intuition's telling you something like this isn't right, or, you know, maybe just like the way that we're treating each other isn't very kind. Like it's probably a sign to like reevaluate what's going on. But I think the big thing for me would be going into the dating pool with like, I'm self-aware enough, or I have enough grasp on like my emotional intelligence and what I need to work on, so that you can use it as a framework to guide your dating. And if someone's not capable to give that same level of awareness or communication skills, like you can use that as a tool of like, okay, well then maybe this isn't my person, or maybe they're open to it and they just needed to do that, and you can see in them like they're capable of growing, and if you're willing to grow with them, like there's nothing like wrong with that either. But the, you know, back to the parent conversation of like, you have to be able to see their capacity for growth and know that they'll like trust they'll be able to get there, kind of thing. And if they're not, and you're willing to put that into a relationship and someone's not giving it back, and back to her point of, you know, just because it's comfortable doesn't inherently make it the right decision.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's right.
So, you know, be aware, be communicative, and like understand that what you put into it is where you're going to get back out of it. Because I think just an observation of the LA dating scene is like, there's just a perception of like everyone just wants to be single, but like they're kind of in the dating pool, and like that places like barriers of like, you know, am I going to find somebody that's willing to be committed and long term and all these different things. But I think if you walk into it of, I know what I'm looking for and I know what I provide, then I'll be able to find my person that can provide that back to me, kind of thing.
Law of attraction.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, the law of attraction. Like, you know, I'm going to also kind of just like willing it into the universe. Yeah. Anytime Nicole is going to say something that's like negative, I'm like, you can't put that in the world.
Yeah, you can't.
Put the good stuff in the world, and you will whisper to each other the bad stuff, so we'll be prepared, but don't put it out there. Like, put the good stuff out. Like, I'm going to find this person. This is what I can provide. I know I can be a good partner. And then trusting in yourself to know, like, when you're going to find that person. Yeah. Kind of thing. And in that, I feel like that awareness, that communication, you also learn where your boundaries are. And not putting up with somebody who's going to, like, constantly be disregarding your boundaries in the process.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And thinking, like, oh, I'm never going to get any better, so I just have to put up with this. Like, I don't deserve any better. Like, if you're a good person trying to do the best that you can, like, you deserve someone who's going to do the same thing. Totally. And just stop putting yourself through like a cycle of bad lack of communication, or not inherently bad people, but folks that are just not prioritizing you. And that's I would give that relationship advice to anybody, regardless if they're queer or not. But I feel like dating in the queer world, when it's already so small, it's sometimes tough. There's a lot of people in LA, but you could be in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a state that's not kind to the LGBTQ community, and then it's even harder. Like, just being able to stick to what you know you deserve, and believing in that and waiting for it. Yeah, kind of thing.
Being patient.
I think both of us went into our relationship at like a certain level of like an emotional maturity and like a baggage. Like, we really had a lot of things resolved. We didn't go into our relationship with a lot of open wounds. Even though like having a queer relationship was so new to me, I still was just so confident in what my boundaries were dating anyone, and what my expectations were, and how I thought I perceived to be treated, and how I was going to treat someone else. So I think having that baseline, we were able to just kind of work things together. I mean, we were like technically dating when I came out to my family, and the trials and tributes with that, and just the ups and downs of family dynamics and world dynamics, work dynamics, like that didn't feel like so big. Because we had this good baseline where both of us were kind of at a level where we were able to come together, and we didn't have to do a lot of healing of ourselves in that relationship, and then had all of these other things
that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
And even if it was like something we carried, like we knew we were carrying it, kind of thing, and we could communicate that. Awesome. Like, I know what baggage I bring, kind of thing. So, or like, I know what my struggles are, and then the other person being willing to be like, oh, well, that's actually maybe a strength of mine. I can help you with that.
Yeah. We got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
But thank you guys so much for coming on again. Yeah.
This was so great.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.